You can leave them to us, boss. Come on, Jokel. Let's knock some heads together.
You guys are in deep doo-doo.
That's right, you just witnessed one of the corniest scenes in all of gaming, and I do not mean that in a bad way. Released back in September of 2005 comes Radiata Stories, an action role-playing game developed by Tri-Ace and published by the beloved Square Enix. If you happen to catch one of my prior videos, Tri-Ace is predominantly known for creating the Star Ocean series, but occasionally strays from the beaten path. And with this title, which allows a player to recruit 176 NPCs to be your party members, there is a lot I would like to discuss. As I was scurrying my way through the internet looking for both old and new games alike to share with you, this was one of the titles that kept popping up. Ironically, as a kid, I can recall seeing the cover of this game multiple times, but never giving it a chance because I was a Final Fantasy fanboy and would rather buy the next installment than try something new. Oh boy, if only I knew. As of today, it currently sits with an overall score of 8.3, so let's take a quick look at the good and bad from other players before I give my take. A user by the name of DinoBeam stated, "This is a special and unique game and it suffers mainly from the story getting sharply depressing towards the end with no relief. Besides that, it is a hidden gem." A hidden gem, you say? Those are dangerous words, buddy. Following in after DinoBeam is a user named StealthGear who stated, "This is largely a skip. The graphics work, the story does not draw you in fast, and its writing and acting is vanilla. The battling was nothing special, so it's no wonder that this game didn't do well. Not fun or funny, unless you are a child." Just for context here, StealthGear did give the game a 6 even with its apparent shortcomings, which was far more than a previous user. What would this channel be without keeping it real though, and diving into the negative reviews too? A user by the name of Shooting Stars 99 stated, "It felt like a cheap version of Suikoden or Chrono Cross. Having 10 times the number of recruitable characters than a party does not appeal to me as you cannot learn about them all, let alone get around to using all of them." I will say that Shooting Stars 99 does have a fair point with the recruitable characters, but you guys know the deal, as that was then and this is now. So as a person who has never played this game before, I decided it was time to. With that being said, I want you to join me as I share my thoughts on Radiata Stories to answer the most important question of all. Was Radiata Stories good? To properly answer that question, I will be assessing the gameplay, the story, the voice acting, and its replayability. So let's dive right in. Starting with the combat, it is initiated by contacting a foe. This transitions the foe and the player to the battle screen in which all battles happen in real time. Jack, who is the only playable character, gets 4 different weapons to choose from that come with their own unique skills. These 4 weapons are a standard sword, a great sword, a spear, and an axe. As he increases his proficiency with each weapon, he unlocks higher costing skills within their respective trees. The game balances this element by applying a combo points or CP cap to prevent excessive spamming of the higher tier attacks. However, I found a mix of both low cost attacks and high cost attacks to be the most efficient. Additionally, after all attacks are obtained, the Volti Blast or limit break for that weapon is also unlocked. If you have happened to play Legend of Legaia 1 or 2, then this battle system may remind you of them. However, the focus here is not on art placement but instead on party formation. Outside of Jack's moveset, the player can also control the party's direction via links. These links not only change how a party operates on the battlefield, such as boxing in the enemy to beat them down, but it also leads to the interesting part of the game, which is the skills. I mentioned earlier in the video that there are 176 recruitable party members, and that was no lie. Each of these characters come with a skill that Jack can learn after X number of times of being in battle with them and linking up. All skills are not created equal, however, so many NPCs have the same skill or a weaker or stronger version of that same skill. The real appeal of recruitment is gathering all the characters of a specific order to recruit their leaders who naturally have the best stats and preferred skills. While this all sounds good on paper, I will say its execution was not my favorite, as 2 issues bring this gameplay loop down. The first issue with the system is that while Jack can learn all of these skills, he can only equip one at any given time. Sure, multiple skills at once would make him OP after a certain point in the game, however, a single skill just feels overly conservative for such a big roster of party members. It would have been more interesting if each character could have gotten up to 3 equipable skill slots with diminishing returns, but listen, I did not make the game. The second issue, which I would argue is the most polarizing, is the recruitment of these NPCs in general. While the game does not punish you for not having the best units in the game, it also does very little in the hand-holding department to encourage recruitment at all. May have been a user error on my part, but it was not until a few hours in till I began recruiting any NPC in general, and here is where it gets crazy. Some NPCs can be recruited by talking to them a few times, or even kicking them into submission, while others can only be recruited by talking to them 5 days in a row within a certain hour of that day. But wait people, there is more. Some characters will also be barred from recruitment if you do not snag them during a certain window of the game's story. So if you wanted to get all 176 units, then you would need to use a guide. But my biggest issue with this overall is the game's poor execution of such a unique mechanic. There were certain NPCs I would have loved to have in my party, but because I did not recruit their brother's, sister's, aunt's, cousin's mother 2 story events ago, I cannot have them join me now. Or let's say I did do that, but I forgot to wait until 9 PM to talk to them at the bar. There goes my chance with them regardless. Honestly, I spent more time in this game recruiting characters than actually being in combat, so be aware of what you may be getting yourself into. Moving on from the gameplay though, let's now talk about the story. It is focused on the main character, who is named Jack Russell.
Come and get it, big guy! You really think you're ready to face Jack Russell?
I may or may not have laughed when he first said that. Anyways, Jack travels to Radiata to join the Knights of Radiata to follow in the footsteps of his dad, Karen Russell. Since Jack is wet behind the ears though, he spends his time climbing the ranks until he reaches Sergeant. Meanwhile, his rival Ridley gets promoted to captain near the same time. Tensions arise, however, between the humans and fairies, which then leads to 2 paths a player can take at a later portion of the game. I ended up choosing the human path on my first playthrough. Either choice locks a player out of certain recruitable units, so a second playthrough may be necessary if you want to collect all 176 NPCs. Regarding the human ending, there is a little twist at the end, but it's honestly not worth mentioning as the story in this game, just like Stealth Gear mentioned before, is vanilla. I had more fun in the story with the one-liners some of these characters say, rather than the main plot itself.
When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Danger isn't in my dictionary.
He's so cool!
But your mileage may vary. Next up on my list is the voice acting, which goes hand in hand with the story and its overall delivery. Jack Russell is voiced by Bryce Papenbrook, who also voiced Adol Christen from the East series, and Inosuke Hashibira from Demon Slayer. Ridley is voiced by Stephanie Sheh, who also voices Sailor Moon in a lot of different iterations, and Eureka from Eureka 7. Lastly comes Gans Rothschild, who is voiced by Robert Martin Klein. Mr. Klein here has also voiced many iterations of Gomamon from Digimon and Tony from Alpha and Omega. These are the 3 main characters of the game, but trust me, there is a lot more I could cover, but I will spare you the long list. In terms of delivery, there's nothing spectacular about any of these performances, as you can tell the game has that early 2000s feel. This is not bad, but also not convincing, as I previously mentioned in the story segment. But I will say this, in terms of the music, this game has some bops. The last part of the game I would like to cover now is its overall replayability. Bottom line up front, neither the combat nor the story is enough to bring me back for a second playthrough, as they are both lacking in their respective departments. The only reason I could see why this game would have some sort of replayability is if you genuinely enjoy collecting. I say that because collecting all 176 NPCs is a feat in itself, filled with patience above all. If you recall, Shooting Stars 99 alluded to this as well. It is just not practical to use all of them, as a lot of skills are just copied and pasted onto a different character model. It feels like these recruitments were created first, and the rest of the game was built around them. In conclusion, Radiata Stories is undoubtedly a unique experience that takes a spin on the traditional JRPG party system. Instead of focusing on a handful of characters, the game attempts to bring in a sense of community where everyone but the shopkeepers can join in on the adventure. Combat is exciting at the start of the game, but once a weapon is mastered, it begins to fall off. It falls off even harder in the gameplay department once you obtain a strong character or two, as their stats and skill tower over the rest of the roster. Story-wise, the game is not deep, but nor does it try to be. It is more about the hustle and bustle of everyday life in the city than the actual plot surrounding it. Lastly, from a replayability standpoint, if you enjoy collecting, a second playthrough may be in your future. So far, I am satisfied with my first playthrough, as I clocked in nearly 40 hours when it was all said and done. But with that being said, let me answer the most important question of all. Was Radiata Stories good? Yes, Radiata Stories is good, but not great. While its recruitment system is unique due to its time sensitivity and day and night cycle, it leaves a player to fend for themselves. If you're looking for an engaging story or immersive gameplay, then this game may not be it for you. If you are looking for a cozy game that puts a focus on its community and the town they live in though, well, Chief may have called. But I have said enough. Radiata Stories, please take it away.
All men must die.
Yeah, that's for sure. I guess. Gee.